All right. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Nice to have you here, sir.
Same here.
Okay. In today's interview, I want to talk about what the Federal Minister of Housing and Urban Development, architect Musa Dangiwa, said recently. He said, due to the severe housing shortage in Nigeria, that Nigeria needs to build 550,000 units yearly for 10 years at 5.5 trillion naira annually to shorten the gap. And as part of this administration's efforts to shorten the gap, he's saying, or he recently approached the Senate and asked for 500 billion naira annually to shorten this gap. So being that you are in the built industry, we'll be talking about this to kind of to understand how realistic his goals are, or if they're just pipe dreams. Are you with me, sir?
Yes, I am.
Okay. For context, as part of efforts to shorten this gap, this housing gap, the current administration launched a Renewed Hope Estates and Cities initiative that aims to provide 50,000 housing units across the country. But at this time, they have performed groundbreaking of 6,612 housing units nationwide. That is about 13.2% of the targeted 50,000 units that they intend to provide under the scheme. So I'll ask some questions to kind of understand where we are and how we can go to where we want to be. The first question I'll ask, seeing that I told you that the federal government is intending to provide 50,000 housing units, and they have already performed groundbreaking on 6,612. I want to ask, how effective do you think this Renewed Hope Estates and Cities program is in addressing the housing shortage in interim, bearing in mind that about 550,000 units is needed annually over 10 years to shorten this gap?
Okay, thank you very much for having me. There's a saying in Yoruba, but I would just say it in English, what it means in English. It says that if you steal a small portion of, if you take a small portion of a soup, then you have done a little bit of stealing. So what I'm saying in essence is that, yeah, there is housing deficit, 550,000, you called it, that is needed per year in order to make up for the deficit, and the government has started. I would say it's a step in the right direction, because they have to start at least with a step. So even if it's that 50,000 that can be achieved, then I would encourage them to, proceed with it. So it's still better than doing nothing at all.
Okay, thank you so much. I also mentioned that the housing minister, Musa Dangiwa, he recently, like last week, approached the Senate saying, in as much as they are trying to provide 50,000 units, that it is a little drop in the ocean, that for some sorts of efforts to be made towards shortening this gap, that the housing ministry needs 500 billion naira annually to provide additional housing units. So being that you're in the built industry, I want to ask, do you think this annual allocation that Dangiwa is requesting, do you think it's effective, or is it realistic in shortening the gap that we face right now in the country?
Yes, like I mentioned earlier, to reduce the housing deficit in Nigeria is not something that can be done at once. So it requires a gradual process. So I'm saying that it's good that the government has started with whatever numbers they want to start with, but it's important that we must start. We must start somewhere. And then consistency would also help to reduce the deficit. So if we can achieve 50,000 housing units this year, for instance, and we keep that up for the next few years, then we would have reduced the deficit by a substantial number.
Okay, all right. Seeing that the federal government is short of the financial wherewithal, that is the 5.5 trillion they need to be able to shorten this gap, and just asking for 500 billion. To kind of give a context to this, to kickstart this, we need hope estate and cities program. 50 billion was what was provided in the 2023 supplementary budget to kickstart it. So you see, even compared to the 500 billion that the housing minister is asking for, that is less than 10% of the 5.5 trillion he says would be needed over 10 years to shorten this gap. So this kind of leaves a wide significant area of housing shortage that still needs to be covered. So as a private practitioner in the business industry, I'm asking, how can the private sector, how can they complement the government efforts to closing this gap? Like, what incentives can be provided to the private sector to complement government efforts in closing this gap, being that at this point in time, the government does not have enough to close the gap?
Okay, yeah, like you rightly alluded, the government cannot do it alone. The housing deficit is so humongous that government needs to encourage the private sector to be part of it. So one of the ways by which this can be achieved is to ensure that, they grant tax holidays to developers, for instance. This approach has been used in road construction. For example, Dangote constructed some roads. I know of that in Lagos, and the company will be granted some tax rebate for the construction of this road. So this approach can also be adopted for the housing industry. Um, Another way by which government can give incentives to the private sector is by ensuring that there is a workable mortgage system in place. I'm not sure how workable or practicable the existing mortgage system is, but there has to be a mortgage system whereby uh, um, the average income earner, for instance, can approach a mortgage bank and get funding to to purchase their houses. So a good mortgage system should be put in place. Interest rates again should be considered. The interest rates that will be given to developers, for instance, or those that are interested in um, in building houses, the interest rate should be attractive enough so that they can, have this interest in the development of housing. So tax rebates, mortgage system, and a favorable interest rate, I would say, are the incentives that government should give to encourage private participants in the housing sector.
For clarity, what do you mean the interest rates should be attractive enough? What do you mean? Should it be higher or lower? Because recently the Central Bank of Nigeria recently increased the interest rate by 50 basis points. So when you mean attractive enough, what do you mean, please?
Yeah, what I mean is that it should be lower. It can't be higher. It should be lower and favorable in the sense that developers can approach the bank and the bank will give them a good interest rate that is different from the general interest rate that other people get, because housing is a basic need of man. People need houses. They need a place to rest their head. So the government should not see it as a business per se. It's more of a social responsibility. Hence, developers or players in the housing industry should be given a lesser interest rate that would encourage them to play actively in the industry.
Okay, thank you so much. Going back to the Renewed Hope Estate and Cities program, the design is for the federal government to provide or to construct 1,000 housing units in each of the 6 geopolitical zones and the Federal Capital Territory, then 250 units in the other 30 units. Seeing how this is distributed, do you think the distribution of the construction of this new housing unit, do you think is evenly spread, or do you feel there are some regions that this housing shortage is severe compared to the others?
Yes, the distribution of the housing unit it can't be equal. Okay. And it shouldn't be equal because there are higher demands in some places than other places. Take, for instance, the demand in Lagos would be higher than any other place, I believe. Okay. So the allocation to Lagos, for instance, should be higher. Likewise, places like Abuja and Port Harcourt, those are the major cities. So the distribution of these housing units shouldn't be equal, and I would encourage the government to base the distribution on statistics of the deficits that are available. So it doesn't have to be equal.
Right. Seeing one of the recurring topics in recent times is sustainability. And just like I said, the federal government recently performed groundbreaking of 6,612 housing units across the country. And this is just at the infancy, or the building is just coming up. So what advice would you give towards sustainability that can be implemented in these housing units to make them more efficient and sustainable in the long run?
Okay, I would say the government should first of all look at simple designs. The designs of these houses should be very simple. What I mean is that the design should be such that it will encourage natural lighting, it will encourage natural ventilation. This has been done in the 80s. If you see the design of buildings in the 80s, they allow for natural ventilation and natural lighting. So there won't be a major need for any artificial cooling or artificial lighting. This is one of the sustainable ways by which government this is one of the sustainable ways this is one of the sustainable ways. So another way is to encourage green areas. I assume that these houses will be built as estates. So green areas should be encouraged. That is, areas where people that can come and play or relax, areas that would encourage inclusivity, where people can, people with their families can come and play and just relax. Another way by which sustainability can be encouraged is through the use of energy saving, energy saving, energy saving, what do I call it now? Fittings, energy saving fittings like light fittings, light bulbs, energy saving light bulbs. Uh, Also, the use of alternative sources of power, alternative sources of energy can be encouraged, such as the use of solar panels, use of battery and inverters and the likes. Another way is to use encourage green buildings. That is buildings that are environmental friendly, and that wouldn't cause much damage to the environment. So these are some of the sustainable ways which government uh, these are some of the sustainable practices which government can incorporate on these projects.
One more question. One of the features of these buildings that are being erected in these renewed hope city, eight states and cities, is that they can be expanded in the future. Do you think that is best practice as far as sustainability is concerned? Like a two-bedroom flat can be expanded to a three-bedroom flat later in the future.
It's a good practice. It's a kind of a modular building construction where you build maybe a one bedroom now, and later, when one's income increases, then you can expand it into maybe 2 or 3 bedroom. It's a good practice, and it's a sustainable practice. I would encourage government to continue to adopt that approach.
Okay. Okay. There are challenges in building or in setting up new housing units across the country. And as an expert in the in the building industry, what are the challenges and what measures do you feel can be taken to address these challenges?
Yes, like the local palace in Nigeria, they said problem no they finish. So
Mhm.
the challenges in the industry um, cannot be, the challenges are many. One of it is acquisition of land. Land acquisition has always been a problem in Nigeria. And then I'm sure that you are familiar with the Omonile seed drop, where you purchase the land, and the Omonile comes the next day to tell you to repurchase that land. So it's a major challenge in the industry. And another thing is another challenge is the mortgage system that seems not to be effective, uh, because possibly of the high interest rate. So many are not interested in taking mortgage to acquire homes. Uh, Another challenge is that there is lack of social housing. I don't know how many social housing that are available in the country at the moment. But as far as I'm concerned, the last of the social housing I know about are the Jaconde houses. So those are the challenges, and the ways this can be surmounted is to on the Omonile issue, laws can be enacted to regulate how this Omonile operates. Laws should be enacted to ensure that people that purchase land can purchase those lands without any fear of someone coming the next day to disturb them. Um, for the mortgage, there should be an effective and efficient mortgage system that would encourage average income earners to approach the mortgage houses and get mortgages to acquire their homes. Social housing should be encouraged, like those that were in place during the Jakonde era. So government should encourage social housing system. There's this rent-to-own scheme that was adopted a while ago by Governor Fashola. This is also one of the ways by which the challenges in the industry can be mitigated. So government can reintroduce such schemes like rent-to-homes schemes.
I didn't initially say that, but under this renewed hope, estates and cities, the rent-to-own scheme is part of the ownership options, as well as the outright purchase and the mortgage loan. So the federal government has already implemented or is planning to implement the rent-to-own schemes in these housing units. Okay, you've been very, very helpful and in your submissions. But before we draw the curtains, I want you to tell me what policies outside the construction of new housing units, what policies and reforms do you think are necessary to create a sustainable and long-term solution to Nigeria's severe housing shortage?
Yes, the policies and reforms are not different from what I've stated earlier about the social housing system, the rent-to-own scheme, which you confirmed that it has been put in place, and that's a very good one. So social housing system, rent-to-own scheme, favorable interest rates, and effective mortgage systems. So government should create policies around those areas to ensure that the deficit in the housing industry is reduced, at least to the barest minimum.
Thank you so much, Engineer Babatunji. You've been so helpful. Thank you so much. And that is all for now.
Thank you too.
All right. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.